Franklin D. Roosevelt led the United States through two of its most difficult periods, the Great Depression and the Second World War. For over a decade, he was the most powerful political figure in America. But there was something the public rarely saw. He could not walk without assistance, and much of his presidency depended on keeping that fact controlled. This is the story of Franklin D. Roosevelt, how he rose, how he led, and how he managed both power and perception. Roosevelt was born in 1882 in Hyde Park, New York. His family was wealthy and well-connected. He didn't attend public school as a child. He was educated at home by private tutors. Later, he went to Harvard. He wasn't an outsider working his way in. He started inside the world of influence. Roosevelt entered politics in his late 20s. He was elected to the New York State Senate in 1910. He presented himself carefully, well-spoken, composed, reliable. He was also distantly related to Theodore Roosevelt. The connection wasn't close, but the name carried weight. Franklin paid attention to how Theodore had built his image: energy, confidence, direct communication. But Franklin's style was different, less forceful, more controlled. In 1913, he became Assistant Secretary of the Navy. It was a serious position, one that gave him national experience. By his late 30s, he was seen as a rising figure in American politics. In 1921, while on holiday, Roosevelt fell ill. It began with fever and pain. Within days, he lost the use of his legs. He was 39 years old. Doctors diagnosed polio. Recovery was uncertain. Full recovery was unlikely. For a politician, especially one expected to campaign and appear in public, this was a major setback. Roosevelt withdrew from public life, but not permanently. Roosevelt spent years working to regain strength. He used leg braces, practiced standing, practiced moving short distances with support. He also learned how to manage appearances. He avoided being photographed in a wheelchair. Public events were staged carefully. He would hold on to a podium or lean on an aide, often out of frame. The goal was consistency, to appear steady, capable, and in control, even when he required significant assistance behind the scenes. Roosevelt returned to public life gradually. In 1928, he was elected governor of New York. As governor, he dealt with unemployment and economic instability. These issues became far more serious after 1929. The stock market crashed. Banks began to fail. Unemployment rose sharply. By the early 1930s, the United States was in the Great Depression. Roosevelt ran for president in 1932. He won. Roosevelt took office in 1933. The situation was urgent. Banks were collapsing. Millions were out of work. Confidence in the system was low. Roosevelt responded with a series of programs known as the New Deal. Key measures included emergency banking reforms, public works programs like the CCC and WPA, Social Security, introduced in 1935. The federal government became more involved in everyday economic life than it had been before. Supporters saw it as necessary. Critics argued it gave too much power to the government. Either way, it changed how the country functioned. Roosevelt used radio to speak directly to the public. These became known as Fireside Chats. He explained policies in simple terms. He addressed concerns directly. The tone was calm and conversational. This helped rebuild trust during a period of uncertainty. It also strengthened his connection with the public. People felt they understood what was happening and what the government was trying to do about it. By the late 1930s, war had begun in Europe. Roosevelt did not immediately bring the United States into the conflict. Public opinion was divided. However, he supported Allied countries, particularly Britain, through programs like Lend-Lease. This allowed the U.S. to provide resources without direct involvement. That changed in 1941. Attack on Pearl Harbor. The United States entered World War II. Roosevelt remained in Washington, coordinating strategy and production. He worked with Winston Churchill, Joseph Stalin. The United States increased industrial output significantly. Factories shifted to wartime production. Troops were deployed across multiple fronts. Roosevelt's role was to manage resources, alliances, and long-term strategy. It was a different kind of leadership, less visible on the battlefield, but central to how the war was organized. Roosevelt was elected president 4 times: 1932, 1936, 1940, 1944. No other U.S. president has served more than 2 terms. By the 1940s, his leadership had become associated with stability, even as his health declined. Publicly, this was not emphasized, but privately, those around him were aware of the strain. By early 1945, Roosevelt was visibly weakened. He continued working, but his energy was limited. In April 1945, he died. He was 63. The war in Europe ended weeks later. Roosevelt did not see it. Franklin D. Roosevelt expanded the role of government. He led during economic collapse. He coordinated a global war effort. And throughout it all, he maintained an image of strength, even when that strength required careful support behind the scenes. This was Franklin D. Roosevelt, a president who shaped modern America and understood how leadership is seen as much as how it is exercised. If you enjoyed this 3D animated history, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Wrath of History for more powerful stories from the past.